So I want to try something that may be a little easier with my current setup. Maybe you guys will like it better, maybe not, but I gotta try it because constantly watching the video feed while I'm trying to paint and show you guys what I'm doing, it's a little tough, and I want to make sure that this commission gets recorded properly. Let me know which style you guys like, whether you like me showing you guys like this on the turntable, or if you'd prefer seeing every step in detail. Also, let me know if you like this audio quality over my first video, which I did a lot more with editing audio-wise. With all that said, let's get into it. The shot you're seeing right now is of prime miniatures. I went about it slightly different than normally. I used varnish as the primer, and then airbrushed ash gray, which is a Reaper color, which is the equivalent of Mechanicus Standard Gray. The thought process behind this is that varnish isn't as thick as normal primer, but paint adheres to it just as well. So by doing this, it is a way to make the maximum amount of detail pop out of the model. Typically, I do this a lot for metal models and resin. So moving on to washes, I use dark tone. This is the result. I didn't do anything really that special with it. I just kind of sprayed down the model with it. This is so that later on, when I airbrush on other layers on top of it, it will act as a sort of shadow tone.
24 hours later.
Our next step is to establish a second base tone. I'm doing this by using the Fang at a 45-degree angle and a 90-degree angle. This we are creating a very prominent shadow in the underside of the model. The shaded base tone will become our lower mid tone. You'll be able to see what I mean a little later on when we're all done with the armor. The next step after establishing our second base tone will be to wash it down to that low mid tone that I was talking about earlier. The paint I'm using for this is a little questionable since it is an alcohol base acrylic, which will require me to spray it down with varnish after this, but I do like this panel liner stuff. Again, you'll see why I like this stuff later, because it is incredibly effective at blending from black to dark brown. This Tamiya dark brown panel liner is roughly equivalent to Agrax Earthshade or Warpaint's Strong Tone.
24 hours later.
So what I've done in this step is very similar to something I've done in previous steps. I airbrushed on heather blue at a 45 and a 90-degree angle, and then I also airbrushed Fenrisian gray on at a 90-degree angle. By the way, doing any of these steps that I do with an airbrush, you can also do with glazes. All glazes are thinned down paints that have become translucent due to how much you thin it down. Typically, it's described as a milky sort of consistency. But anyway, it'll be two more steps and then we'll be done with the armor. This step ends up being a really subtle one, so you can skip it if you'd like, for time's sake. You can see with how I'm holding it and maneuvering it around that the lining on it is a little bit more defined. And that's because I've put a little bit of strong tone, sort of like a edge highlight, but only in the crevices. So I think it's called pin highlighting or something like that. There's a name for the technique, but I can't seem to remember it. Anyway, strong tone is equivalent to Agrax Earthshade. Here I just did some final touch-ups of the armor. I brought out the blue-gray a bit more with the airbrush, and I also edge highlighted some light gray along the edges. And again, it's nothing special, it's just typical edge highlighting. I was kind of hoping that you'd be able to see a little better with the stills, but maybe not. So after doing the armor, we moved on to doing the fur and leather bits. I'm doing this with Rhinox hide, and I'm doing a very simple technique, just kind of paint by numbers, basing over the work we did over the parts that we need to go over. And this is the results. I changed the lighting a bit just so you can kind of see what's going on a bit better. So after doing the armor, we moved on to doing the fur and leather bits. I'm doing this with Rhinox hide, and I'm doing a very simple technique, just kind of paint by numbers, basing over the work we did over the parts that we need to go over. And this is the results. I changed the lighting a bit just so you can kind of see what's going on a bit better. We're going to end up repeating ourselves a lot with this, so I'm going to skip ahead a couple steps through. Essentially, at this point, I've done an undercoat for the lighter colors on the shoulder pads, and I've also done the basing for the trim. We're also going to do another wash with Tamiya dark brown over the fur and leather. Once that's done, we'll get back to you. I may end up skipping ahead a couple times because it's all going to be pretty much the same from here on out. Very standard sort of steps: base, layer, wash, that sort of thing. While I am at it, I will also specify what I've used that I haven't mentioned. I've used Tamiya XF copper for the trim, Rhinox hide for the fur, like I said, and Celestra gray for the undercoat for what will be the red and yellow colors on the shoulder pads. The undercoat is necessary because specifically for yellow just has a hard time covering over darker colors that like we've been using. Same pretty much with red, but to a lesser extent. Note to the audience, if you can hear my voice changing a bit throughout the video, it's because in between the start and finish of this video, I've gotten sick. I'm also starting to run out of space on my hard drive, so I'm gonna have to skip to the end and start going over the summary. In the future, I'm probably going to be changing video editors because this one doesn't seem to store video, image, or audio files in a smaller format on the computer, because I've gone through about 1 terabyte's worth of space just in the past 3 videos I've publicly released, and then a video that I haven't released yet, and a video for my school. I think this picture is probably the best picture to show you how dark and how glossy the Tamyia stuff dries. It also shows you what I did with the shoulder pads, where I just coated the parts that I wanted to be yellow or red in Vallejo deep yellow, and I also used my own mixture of that would be roughly equivalent to Evil Sun's Scarlet. And I used that to just go over the white, the parts I painted Celestra gray. In this, you can kind of see why we went over it first with Celestra gray, because the brighter colors take really well to it. You don't have to cover it so many times. You can go over it once and be done with it pretty much. Here are some of the pictures that I took a little bit later on in the process. At this point, I believe I was base coating the flesh and the hair, and I was pretty much done with the trim. In later stages, when I go over the combinations of colors, then I'll let you know what I used and when. And then here's the final result. I And then here's the final result. I had gone over the runes on the step, and then here is the final result. I went over the runes with the staff in a bluish white sort of color, and I believe I did some steel colors on some of the like pipes and stuff like that. That's on there. And I also did a little bit of like basic bone on the skulls and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm pretty proud with the result of it. You might not be able to see all that well underneath Njal's hood. But his face turned out really, really nice, and I think all of them turned out really nice. I did try to go a little bit subtle on the fur, but and maybe it was too subtle in the end. But again, I really like the result. Hopefully, my customer likes it as well. All of these paints are what I used on this commission. I'll put subtitles saying what I used it for, but the order goes from left to right, from base tones to layers and so on. Feel free to pause at any point to get a better look at the names, because some of them doesn't seem to be all that obvious. If you have any questions about it, please post in the comments. I'll be honest, I do these videos primarily out of a want to get more customers and get more visibility on the market. So if you like my work, we can work out a commission. If you like it but can't, if you like my work but you don't want to do a commission, then hitting like always helps. And my philosophy on doing these videos is that I shouldn't be telling you what you should do. But if you want to see more, I'd recommend hitting subscribe, because I post relatively infrequently, and not at all on a schedule, though I'm trying to get a schedule in. So I guess I'll see you next time. Next video will be on the Loyal 32 as per this customer's request.